Boy Scout to look for him.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw the Boy Scouts that rounded me up.
That's their job.
Sure,
Well, you
right.
brought a friend.
Everybody doing it. Crazy.
Okay, so feel free to vamp until he gets here.
Right, so baby, I had to practice. How you doing? How was our weekend?
Good.
Fantastic. Oh. All right, so what are we vamping about? Huh?
Who's your friend?
Who's this guy? Bill Diamond, the great master puppeteer and former Jim Henson. I said that I'm an amateur magician and stuff, so I wanted to add this guy to my, I haven't named him yet. Well, Zippets. His name is Zippets. What's happening?
Hope you guys had a good, terrific time.
Who is terrific?
It was terrific, isn't it? This is,
Did you have a good terrific?
I had a wonderful terrific con. I had so many special feels that happened. Like I used to be a former Boy Scout, and I walked into the Boy Scout room, and I was able to talk about my experiences at Troop 450 and the fact that my very first trip was to the World Jamboree in Tokyo back in the 70s. First time I'd ever been on a plane, but it opened my eyes to all things that were going to come. And then a person brought, is she here, Candy Curl here? Susan, how are you? But a person that I did my very first play in Harvard Stage, not the Harvard Stage Company, Harvard High School. It was a horrible play called A Gad with a Cat, but it was my first time on stage. She brought me the original picture of that curtain call. So I put that on Instagram, and that means a lot. In a time that there was no social media, and no instant, and no Instagram and stuff, the fact that, I don't know, 40 years later, that would come back into my life, that's extraordinarily special. So between that and some great interviews, one-on-one things, and some continued interviews, and just meeting people that have a deep appreciation for what I and the rest of the guests do is extraordinary. Oh, and I have my cousin, my first cousin, who I hadn't seen in 20 years, came yesterday. So, I mean, you come to Connecticut and all things come full circle. It's fantastic. How about you folks?
Oh, great time.
Yeah? Mitchell, how are you? You've seen my table more than once.
Yeah.
How
Yeah?
far did you go in scouting?
I went 2 badges shy of Eagle Scout.
Really?
Yeah, I was a Life Scout.
It's got to be.
Well, you do. That's another thing we have in common. That's fantastic, man.
Surprised that didn't come up in any of our conversations.
I know. The merit badges weren't on the table. That's great. What was your best camping
Okay, folks,
experience?
fresh from a nap in his bucket, Rene Auberjonois.
There you go. Do it. My fellow thespian and scholar.
Hi, buddy. Sorry, whose is that? That's good. Okay.
Here all day.
Do we share this or what?
Yeah, you both get a microphone and I'm just loud.
You're loud.
Yes, sir. Welcome, guys. Welcome to Connecticut. Welcome to Terrificon. Both of you have been here before. You grew up here. You were born and raised here, yes?
That's right.
And where are you
Well,
from?
not born. I was raised here at the age of 3.
Up in Hartford.
Hartford, Connecticut, born in D.C.
And you've worked here a few times, but where are you from originally, Rene?
New York. I was born in New York City, and
Excellent.
raised in Rockland County, up the Hudson. And yeah, I've been in Connecticut. Yeah, we talked about Stratford, Connecticut. When I was 16 years old, I was an apprentice at Stratford Shakespeare Festival, and then got it at Summer Stock in Sharon, Connecticut. And other stuff. Yeah,
Excellent. Okay, our fans, if they don't know already, I would like each of you to tell us about how you got cast in Star Trek originally, and were you Trekkies before you were cast? Tony?
I auditioned for the, did you work at Harvard Stage Company, by the way?
In what?
Hartford Stage Company, did you ever do that?
No, I never did. No.
Did you do Yale?
Never did Yale. Both our kids went to Yale.
Oh, great,
Yeah.
great. I thought maybe you did some repertory work there. I've always been a Star Trek fan. I was raised by my aunt who, her and I would, besides not knowing I was bored until I was 13, we just watched movies together and favorite TV shows, and the original Star Trek was one of them. And I auditioned with them 5 times before I actually got my first gig. So I knew we liked each other and stuff. And I've never been a regular, but I had a great guest star experience.
He had a great guest starring experience.
More than one. We'll get to that in a minute.
But that, the first job was his current voice brother. I just, I was nervous as heck, and my very first shoot was on board the Enterprise.
Yeah,
and it was
wow.
amazing. So, but you let go of those.
So
first
you
jobs.
knew what you were in for. I really didn't know, because, when I was 16, we moved to England. My dad was a foreign correspondent, and and sort of Star Trek sort of passed me by. I was in university and stuff, and the original you couldn't live in this universe without knowing about Star Trek. But it wasn't like, I didn't have like Tony had, my friend Armin Shimmerman, he just could, chapter and verse, knew the whole story. I really didn't. So then when my first involvement was in Undiscovered Country, and I was just doing a cameo. Nick Myers, a friend, asked me to come in and do that part, and I went in to get my uniform fitted, and did the fitting, and I'd been around for a long time by then as an actor, and when I did the fitting and I was leaving, and the costume designer said, "Boy, now you're in for it." And I right over, and now I know what I'm in for.
Well, you both had experience in the prosthetic makeup chair.
Yeah.
Okay, can we get a story from each of you about that? Without using any cuss words?
Well,
Well, I mean, the first time I had prosthetics of any kind was playing in Klingon, and I was just so happy to be. It was one of my first jobs in Hollywood, and I was happy to be validated and stuff. And actually, even though some people, it was hardly recognizable, but to me, it was what was on the inside. And Michael Westmore ran a great makeup department, and for me, some people hated prosthetics, but I loved it because each piece, to me, was another layer to the character, and you just use it to transform. And the Klingon was 4 hours, so or you could take a quick nap and then wake up and all of a sudden you're there.
not all actors had the chops for that. The prosthetic makeups, people would either become claustrophobic or they would feel somehow that they couldn't get through it. That's an email from me, I think.
It's a new job.
Couldn't get past the mask. But then really actors who have a grasp of their craft, like Tony, and having done theater, once you've done some theater, you learn that the mask actually helps you project rather than masking you. People would say, "Oh, how did you express your emotion as Odo?" Because he was such a sort of blank-faced character. And because I had studied mask work and then eventually taught mask work at Juilliard, I was very aware what a great help it is, because we really hide our emotions with our faces often, but our bodies can't hide our emotions. And just the tilt of the head can really make things project like crazy. And I had a chance to wear a Klingon makeup once, and I loved it.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I didn't know you taught at Juilliard.
Yeah, the first 2 years of the school.
Oh, that's fantastic. Back when the acting company was running?
Yeah, well, then the acting company developed out of that, but in those first 2 years, it was before, I had Patty Lapone and...
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I was a terrible teacher.
I can't imagine.
I was.
You teach by experience and
Yeah, but
generosity.
I was not all that much older than those people.
Right.
At that time, I was still, my career was really still beginning. And, I was stoned. No. No, it was the 60s, Never mind, I'm gonna stop talking.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the co-stars with which you are most closely associated. Tony, with you, it's Michael Dorn as your brother Worf. I met him last month. He's a sweetheart too.
He's great.
Talk a little bit about working with him and how you developed your brotherly relationship.
Well, in the world of TV, you have to make quick associations, you have to make quick decisions. But I remember, because I auditioned, it was over a 2-month period of time, and I finally get to Klingon, which is one of the fiercest races in the entire Star Trek canon. I met Michael immediately. I'm normally a shy, innocent person, but when it comes to the work, you have to step forward. I just immediately grasped my hand and said, "I'm your brother." I know. I said, we need to make a bond. He says, we will. The next thing was just moment to moment. And we have, like you said, the mask in between us. And not only that, but the costume, which is another thing that actors have to learn how to incorporate. How to stand, you find out how to stand, what your costume is, what it relates to the world around you, and we just looked at each other in the eye. The writers on Star Trek were so terrific that if you knew how to find the art and find the resolution, the objectives are very clear. So Michael and I just played, and we've been friends ever since.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Renee, you had two co-stars that you worked very closely with, Armin Shiverman, who you mentioned,
Yeah.
and the now visitor, Karen Reese.
Indeed.
So please tell us about each of those
Well,
relationships.
gosh, you know, when you do a role over a long period of time, how it evolves, and not only your character, but the character in relationship to the characters that you are working with, because you're only as good, you know, it's like tennis. You can only be a good tennis player if the ball is coming back to you with some, you know, in craft and intelligence. And anyway, Armin and I had worked in the theater together before we both got cast in Star Trek. And I think that is one of the things, although people do connect us, to Armin and I, it's always been kind of a source of bemusement that actually there was only one episode in 7 years which focused on our characters together. Usually I would walk into the bar and insult him, or he would walk into my office and insult me. So that was, you know, and we were always like this spice that would be added. But it was a relationship that the audience obviously responded to, and that the writers, you know, were very cognizant of and focused on. I think one of the reasons it worked was two characters that are supposed to have a real enmity or, you know, friction between them. It's always better if you're friends in real life, because it removes any self-consciousness about giving it to your friend, you know, because you're friends. And I think that the underlying thing that worked, I hope, it was that I think subliminally the audience knew that Quark and Odo actually liked each other and were, you know, there was a real dependency on each other. And so that was that. And it was a great relationship, and we loved working together. Because we had the same kind of training as actors, we sort of worked the same way. We're very kind of diligent and technically, you know, wanting to make sure everything worked right. I mean, some actors can just, they're wonderful. I wish I could do it. You can just sort of wing it. So that was good. With Nana, my first memory of Nana was after I had been cast in the role, and then we were going to the first reading at Paramount Studios. We hadn't even started shooting yet. The cast was all coming together to meet for the first time. Well, except I knew Armin, and Andy wasn't on board yet. I didn't know anybody. And so I parked the car in the lot, and I started finding my way to the producer's office where we were going to all meet. And I was walking behind a woman whose rear end was very distracting to me. I was thinking, man, this is a nice looking woman here. And I'm following her, and I'm thinking she's going to think I'm stalking her because we're walking and everything. And it was Nana, and we arrived at that place and became really dear friends. We still are dear friends, as I am with Armin. Yeah, and neither of us knew that relationship was going to develop that way, nor did the writers, in fact. You know, when people ask about, oh, well, how much influence did you have on your character? You know, and I've said this a million times, but I think that it's still true, is that, you know, we are the instrument that plays the music. The writers write the music, and they have a very strong idea of what that music is going to sound like. But then the instrument starts to play it, and the instrument starts to influence how it's going. And so I suppose They had no idea that it was going to become a romantic involvement. So I suppose somehow the gods knew that when I was walking behind her in the parking lot, that's where we were going. But luckily, I've been married now for 53 years, and Judith and Nana and I and Nana's husband Matt are dear friends.
Excellent. I'm a charter Trekkie. I was in front of my TV with my dad on September 8, 1966. And I have watched every single episode more times than I can count. The DVDs are worn thin. And in my opinion, the last 10 episodes of Deep Space Nine's final season, that last story arc, are the best Trek ever written. What would you consider Odo's greatest moment of his story arc? You think about that. I want to talk to this guy for a minute about the visitor. This gentleman here owes me a box of crying tissues. And I'm not the only person who has said this. That was such an amazing piece of television.
Yes, it was.
And you needed to win all the Emmys for that 1 hour of television. Can you give us a few memories of filming that particular episode, please?
Yeah, I appreciate those words, and I appreciate everybody's, as Rene said, sometimes it's not about you playing the instrument. The work is on the screen, I was going through a period in my life, I lost a woman that had raised me. For about 3 weeks, months, I was inconsolable. Didn't know what to do, couldn't get off the couch. Out of the blue, they sent me that script. And it was like she was saying, you need to channel me, you need to get off the couch, you need to go back to work. And that's the power of Star Trek, because not only what we do in it, but all the people that have told me what particular episodes have influenced them or affected them or changed them. And that's what that is. So it's a kind of magic that I don't even dare explain it, It was something that was just thrown into the cosmos. It saved my life. Not any particular, but just the circumstances behind, and the words were sort of like venue to be able to attach myself to. And everybody, the regulars on the cast, because I'm a guest star, but everybody from Rene to Nana to made me feel secure. David Livingston directed the show. He was a meticulous kind of person that started as a line producer. But, the final day, that makeup was the hardest prosthetic I ever had, because it took 8 hours to get transformed into the old Jake. And I remember my final day, it was a call at 1 a.m. on a Sunday night for 9 a.m. set call the next following morning, and we had 20 hours of work. By the final scenes, we had pages, even though I draw my stuff out, I map my stuff, and I mark where I'm coming from and stuff. But we had pages laid out on the floor, and David was so kind, the crew was so kind. They took the time to allow me to, because it was a mouthful, and it was shooting in 8 days. It's not like you have 5 weeks of rehearsal or 5 minutes of rehearsal, and you can get to do it. But because I was loaded emotionally, I think I was able to transcend, and as you said, you're only as good as your weakest link. And by that point, everything was running on full steam.
There were no weak links in that episode.
Balls, and I could respond, and but not necessarily knocking it out of the park. Just being able to have the time to be gentle, and to just sometimes not even say enough.
Sometimes there's excuse me, I know you want that. You do 26 episodes for 7 years, and you're going to have some, generally speaking, just a very high quality of work, as I hope and I think we did on that show. But obviously there are the good shows, and then there are the shows that didn't quite make it. And but then if you're lucky, and there'll be one show in each season that will be kind of a perfect storm of a great script and perfect casting and a director who really gets it and is determined to get it onto the film. And that episode definitely is one of them. That's all I have to say about that. But it's great that it happens, and it doesn't happen all the time. You know, I directed 8 episodes, and I don't know, the numbers are, I'm making them up out of my head, but I would say that of the 8 episodes, 2 of them were really good, and maybe 4 of them were fine, they were okay, and 2 of them, so
Name names, Renee?
no names, but there you go. But that's, you know, that's what you hope to do when you're, Tony said he was thinking on his feet, and you have to make decisions very quickly. And that is why Star Trek has, across the board, actors of very high quality. A lot of them are theater actors, which means that they have a real strong foundation in their craft and technique, but then are able to make it organic and of the moment, and they trust themselves to make decisions about the character very quickly, and blah, blah, blah.
No, that's why these people are here. And I'm going to turn it over to them because they paid to be here very soon. But I want to step aside from Star Trek with each of you for a brief moment. And the one word I want to say to you, sir, is Zoom. Flash fans, anyone? Yeah. You all recognize his voice the moment the Reverse Flash spoke? Yeah. Just checking. What can you tell us about your experiences doing the voice work at the Flash?
It's so surprising. I mean, I had no idea. They called me, it was like 11:30 on a Wednesday saying, hey, would you like to come join the DC universe? I'm just starting to get some work as a voice actor. I know Rene has done volumes of work. And I said, sure, why not? A, I need a job, and B, I like comic books, and why not? I had no idea. It was supposed to be 4 episodes. It ended up being 16, and it looks like we're going to be doing some more in season 3. Voice work is easy compared to having to be on a series regular or even a guest star, because everybody does the heavy lifting, shooting the show, and then finally they bring you in for about 6 hours. You can wear slippers, you can wear nothing, you can wear a robe, you can have feathers in your ear.
You don't have to memorize anything.
Memorize anything, it's all written down for you. They just have to repeat it several times. So I'm really overwhelmed by the response, particularly among the young people that have come to me, fathers and sons and mothers and sons and daughters that have just enjoyed the art. It seems to be a show that's working on that level.
And the word I'd like to say to you, sir, is poisson. Please
Poisson.
talk to us a little bit about your work on
That's
The Little Mermaid.
interesting voice work you're talking about. Yeah, you know, I had I've done a fair amount of just voice character work, and it's a very, very competitive and very difficult business to break into because of the fact that it's very attractive. You don't have to even look like the character that you're playing. Your voice has to look like the character. That allows for people from all walks of life and all kinds of diversity to come into the business. And I was lucky enough to get into it because I was working in the theater, and a man who was the casting director at the theater where I was working in Los Angeles, then changed his career and became voice director at Hanna-Barbera in the golden days back then. And because he knew theater actors, he hired us, and that's how I got my foot in the door. But, you know, getting your foot in the door is one thing, but then to get into a Disney film, you don't even know. I mean, now, the only thing, I've done a number of Disney projects, always French. Always French. That's all they can think of. That's like, oh, it's a French actor, get Rene Auberjonois. Even though, just because my name is French, I'm not French or whatever. Anyway, you know, but I did get my foot in the door. Again, because of my theater background, because Ashman, the writer, and had seen me in the theater, and they asked me to come in, and they taught me the song, and they said, okay, and they put it on a cassette player. It was that long ago. And for a week, I drove around, you know, in LA doing my, and learned the song. I went back in a week later and recorded it twice and left. And I think it was 2 years later it came out. I was in New York at the time doing a show a musical on Broadway, and I went after the theater one night to a late showing of it, and I sat there, me and the two other people, and I saw this character appear on the screen, and you know, when you see yourself on the screen, there's always, you know, oh, I know, oh, why are you doing that? But when it's a character, it's just your voice, you suddenly believe it, and you're liberated from that kind of judgment of yourself.
That's my boss. I'm gonna ignore it.
Oh, well,
It's my boss.
that's a
That's a text message.
I thought I was that interesting. And he was just giving it to me. Anyway, so I went in and I sang the song, and now every time, Madison, you came up to say hello to me, and you, among every other kid that came up during the whole weekend, and then I would go, les poissons, how I love les poissons, love to chop and to serve little fish, first I cut off their heads and I pull out their bones, ah mais oui, ça c'est toujours delish, les poissons, hi hi hi, ha ha ha. And they all stare at me like that, and they stare at me like Madison is staring at me now. Who is this old guy?
Okay, let's meet some of these people, shall we? Who has a question for one of our guests? Yes, sir. Your name, please.
Mitchell,
Mitchell, welcome.
my question is for both Tony and Renee. Throughout your entire careers as actors, which you've made a lot of relationships, which one do you carry on the most to this day?
You mean personal relationships?
Yes, personal.
With fellow actors?
Fellow actors, directors, producers, anybody?
Anybody that you met on the job and became friends with?
Yeah, well,
Go ahead. Let's talk about those.
you know, my first film was Platoon, and we hit the ground running, and we had no idea what we were doing, and 4 Academy Awards later, most of us have stayed in close contact, and we're actually getting ready to do a documentary about, it's almost approaching its 30-year anniversary, so we're going to do a documentary about where we are, what's happened to us, because most of the guys have gone on to different careers, different scandals, different, just different life has happened to us. So I can't wait for that. It's going to be wonderful. And then also, and from the theater world, which is, speaking, I hope for both of us, has been always the deepest impact. And you know, I got to work with August Wilson twice. Who I think is one of the greatest modern playwrights ever, and originated King Henry II. I remember for 2 years, I'm sitting there with August and with Max Roach, the great jazz drummer who did our score. And Max was so animated, incredible. He was in his 80s, but he was like playing along, and so we were getting something from him. August, on the other hand, because he was so into his words and the lyricism and what he was doing, would just be leaning back. And the man never opened his eyes. During 2 years of rehearsal, that used to irk me. I said, am I doing something wrong? And somebody, the stage man said, he's just listening if you put that comma where it's supposed to be. Or if you left out a and, if, or but. So, you know, those are the things that make, that I cherish.
When you work on a piece of art, which, not to be grandiose, but like a theater piece or a film, or it's very intense because, in fact, you're leaping empty-handed into the void. You're committing yourself to failure because you can't possibly really succeed, because what you're doing is, the root of it as a performer is usually goes back to a thing in your very early stages of development of not wanting attention in an ego. A lot of actors are egocentric. Hello. But it's not so much that it's wanting. It goes almost to a relationship between a child and an adult, wanting to give them, let me show you this, let me give you this, it isn't always pay attention to me, it's I've got to tell you this because it's so exciting to me. And what the hell am I talking about?
Long-term friendships.
Long-term friendship. All right, well, I'm gonna pivot here right now. For me, I was talking about the intensity of the experience. So you come out of experiences like working on a play together or doing a film. Plays often, if you're in a play that runs, if you work on it for 2 years with the same people or new people coming in, I mean, you can't help but create a kind of bond, and because you feel like you're in danger, you really depend on each other. And I know that sounds weird to say you're in danger, but you are in danger. When you put yourself out there, you are asking for that adult in the world to say, shut up and go back in the corner, I don't want to hear from you anymore. But if you succeed at it, you get them to pay attention and see what you have to offer. I'm still off track. But yeah, the thing that I've found, that is true, and I have many at my age, and I've been around a long time, I have a lot of friends, and I wouldn't pick one out of the other. The thing I find interesting is how many of my friends from the business are not actors, but are like the sound man. One of my dearest friends in the world is a guy who worked on a movie that I made for PBS in 1970. And I walk with him every day when I'm in LA. We walk together. He's my age. We're old guys. And we've been walking and running and cycling together for years. And he's my friend. And he's a sound man. And that goes for cinematographers. And because I really do really admire the people who make it possible, who really make it work. Those people.
Our next question, please.
Yeah, this is for
Your name, sir?
Jim.
Jim. Hi, Jim.
For
Welcome.
Renee. First of all, bless me, Father, I have sinned.
Okay.
All
right, then.
Not over a bottle of Jacob.
That was a reference. You can remember back to 1970.
I do, yeah.
But of theater, television, and film, which is your favorite and why?
Well, that answer changes from moment to moment and year to year, and frankly, at this point in my life, film, because the demands are usually briefer, and I don't have unlimited time left on this earth, and I have a lot of things I want to do that maybe don't have anything to do with performing. And so when I get a chance, when someone says they want me to work, I can't imagine going back to the theater at this point in my life, because I've done it, and it's 8 shows a week, and it's we were talking about that. Yeah.
First day.
Yeah.
Well, I love theater. That's where it started. I mean, one day I hope to get to play King Lear. I'm working on a one-man show right now called Ghost in the House about Jack Johnson, the first African-American heavyweight champion in this country. They got exiled because it was some things he did. And hopefully his partner's on the desk. But for me, whenever I do theater, you get to speak with great writers, with long, lengthy passages, or sometimes not speaking at all, just listening. It brings out a sort of creative spark in you that allows you to do, hopefully, excellent television and film. I love all of them. I'm not going to say one thing is better than the other.
Yeah.
But because they're all, I think every artist and every human being gets what they're supposed to get at that time in their life. And what we do is walking a tightrope as artists. We're, ones that are courageous enough to reach and go deep. You're curious, you're balancing, and if it works, we get the feedback from you. If it don't, we hear laughter in the hallway. Shut up.
I love you for saying that. Who's got our next question, please? Sir, in the back. Your name?
John.
John. Hi, John. Welcome.
Thank you. Quick question for the both gentlemen. Every venture is unique for you, Rene. You had Boston Legal, the original MASH movie, Star Trek, Deep Space Nine. For Tony, it was Candyman, Final Destination, so on and so forth. Are there any common threads when you go and you audition or you get a script or something and you look for these common themes for like what attracts you the most to the job? Is it the writing? Is it who you may be starring with? Is it like what comes together for you as you're doing each individual project so unique and so different?
Well, we have no control over who we're going to star with unless we're fortunate enough to be producers. But I have learned that you're only as good as your weakest link. So you hope that the director that is smart enough to hire you is smart enough to hire people of equal caliber. Because that's when it's fun. As long as it stays fun, I'm going to continue to do it. And then it becomes a chore, or my agent calls and what does he want, then I'll walk away. But so far, it's been fun. I hope to one day be able to teach like Rene has and share my life experiences with young people that are, looking for their path. But there's nothing. It's, for us, I think a lot of times, some people think it's glamorous. Oh, we have offers every day. Oh, there's scripts on the table every day. In some phases of life, that may be true. But most of the time, we're piddling in our gardens, playing with our pets, listening to great music, whether it's classical, jazz, pop, opera, whatever, and loving life and eating good food. And that's when you don't expect the person to call is when miracles happen. You just live your life. All of a sudden, oh wow, what's this? Oh, they do? Really? Oh, I gotta meet them? Well, okay.
The fact is, and in this business, you see it through gauze, really, because the fact is, it is a business, it's work, and it's trying to build a career, and the number of actors in this business who really can control what's coming at them and what they pick and choose, and I did Star Trek because I had 2 kids in university, and my wife said, well, how do you expect to pay for that? And I said, well, I guess I better get a series or we're going to sell the house. And I was lucky I got the series, but and I did Benson, which was another long-running show that I did. And I did that because I had turned down regular roles on television series up until that point. But then I was 40, turning 40. We couldn't keep going back and forth between New York and LA. Our kids were at an age where we had to get them into school and pay for school. And so I said, okay, Benson came along, and I knew those actors. I knew Robert Guillaume. I had worked with him in the theater, and I knew that he was just a great man, and a wonderful actor, and Inga, who played Krauss on it. God, I had done a production of Othello. She played Desdemona, and I played Rodrigo, some idiot character. But so I knew that was going to be a good gig, and I accepted it at that point. And it says 5 minutes at the back of the room. I battled away.
I know, I'm popular. They all forgot what my panel is. Thanks, Tom. Next question, please.
Yeah, this is for both of you. Besides Star Trek, do you have any favorite guest star roles?
All the ones that worked and the ones that you guys liked, all the other ones I've learned from tremendously. This damn phone!
I'm gonna turn it off. I'm gonna turn it off.
Somebody named
Yeah.
Gia Pace.
You know what?
Yeah, I know.
I'm in the middle of my panel with Tony and Rene. I'll call you back. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
And we have 3 minutes.
Off the top of my head, I did a guest starring role on a show called Chicago Hope, in which I played a heart surgeon who had Tourette's syndrome and couldn't stop. And anyway, and that was, I remember that role. So.
We got time for one more quick question. Sir, your name?
Will.
Will, welcome.
This is for Tony Todd. You did a couple of guest stars on Homicide, Life on the Street, where you played this firebrand journalist.
Yeah.
who was a real activist.
TV
And
supporter.
it reminded me so much of guys that I knew in my neighborhood that I grew up with.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, when you take a park, are there like people in your life or people
I
that you...
remember everybody that's ever influenced a single moment in my life. You know, Billy Paul, a dear friend of mine, who was a great singer. He had Me and Mrs. Jones. He recently passed away, but he does an intro, his album Europe. He says, "This is for Philadelphia back alleys and pool halls." Just means that sometimes the experience you draw on as an actor comes from the lowest places, and it can come from high places. But you got to remember, everybody that you come in contact with that has made an influence, and then you somehow draw pieces from that to create a part of the puzzle.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. These guys are ready to answer their favors. Please go down, go buy some photographs, get some pictures taken. Rene is also doing sketches for Doctors Without Borders. Please support that charity as well. All right? We'll see you all